Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage Gavin McDonald, partner at Cox & Palmer and chair of the Halifax Chamber Board.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us. My name is Gavin McDonald, as the voice of God just mentioned, and I'm chair of the board for the Halifax Chamber and a partner with the law firm of Cox & Palmer. I would like to begin this event by acknowledging that we are in Mi'kmaq, the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. This territory is governed by the Treaties of Peace and Friendship, which Mi'kmaq and Maliseet peoples first signed with the British Crown in 1725. In the spirit of reconciliation, we are making a donation today to the Mi'kmaq Native Friendship Centre. Thank you to our presenting sponsor, National Public Relations, for keeping this event free for all to attend virtually. And thank you to our host partners, Construction Association of Nova Scotia, Dalhousie University Faculty of Management, Rowe School of Business, McGuinness Cooper, Nova Scotia Association of Realtors, Olin Brewery, and TELUS Business. It's been almost 2 months with Premier Rankin at the helm. His first budget came soon after he was sworn in, and we wanted to take this opportunity to hear from the Premier on the budget, plans to get Nova Scotians vaccinated, and move from a daily focus on COVID to our future. And most importantly for our members, his plans for the economy. The Halifax Chamber has been hearing from our members over the last year on what they need from our government. These were consolidated into our recommendations for the budget, which was sent to the Premier's office and to all MLAs last month. While the Chamber approves of more support for businesses and employees during a pandemic, we also feel that there are ways to optimize government spending. We ask the government to provide Nova Scotians with a concrete set of actions for the economic recovery that includes support for businesses, reimagining policy, community-based support, and a plan for economic growth. We're now a year into the pandemic, and we still don't test at the airport. This confuses our members, since most of our cases in Nova Scotia are related to travel or close contact with people who traveled. The Chamber urges the government to implement testing at the Halifax Stanfield Airport so we can reduce quarantine time if a person tests negative, and thereby increase travel into and out of Nova Scotia safely to help local businesses and the economy in general. As we head into the tourism season, a $2.5 billion industry that is crucial to our economic well-being, and one that was hit hardest by COVID, the government should provide support to tourism and hospitality operators for the next year to help them recover from what has been a devastating year. Nova Scotia has been a leader in fighting COVID, both nationally and internationally. But we are at the point where we need to celebrate our success and plan to welcome people back to our province safely. We suggest that Tourism Nova Scotia's budget should be increased by $10 million for media and advertising campaigns, as well as programming to promote travel to Nova Scotia as people are making their travel plans for the summer and fall. As we welcome visitors back, we also need to build local consumer confidence. What additional steps can government take to show how safe our hospitality sector is? It's been a tough year for everyone. It's extremely important that we promote and provide mental health supports for the business community, their employees, and all Nova Scotians. Through the Nova Scotia Affordable Housing Committee, we want municipal affairs policy and programming to achieve meaningful change over the next 1 to 2 years. And that's years, not decades. Finally, as we recover and grow together, let's ensure that the government's All-Together Plan updates are made public to increase awareness and thereby accountability and transparency. As just about the safest place to live and work in the world today, we certainly hoped we would see a provincial budget that incentivized quick recovery for all businesses, but particularly helped those hardest hit. It started well. No new taxes and fees, keeping more money in the pockets of consumers and supporting local businesses. The government also set a new target to reduce regulatory burden on businesses by $10 million in 2021, while increasing resources in the Office of Regulatory Affairs and Service Effectiveness. We also recognize the importance of the extra $1 million for NSBI to continue the digital adoption program for Nova Scotia businesses. Yet, in a budget with $1 billion in new infrastructure and innovation spending and $859 million in increased departmental expenses, of which $771 million is allocated to health and wellness, community services and education, and early childhood development, the budget provided virtually no new money or supports for the businesses most impacted by the pandemic. In fact, the budget allocation for the only department tasked with economic development, inclusive economic growth, and the crowns that enable its work, declined by $23 million. While the Finance Minister and his senior staff use phrases like invest in recovery, an economy where business can grow, and the Premier has stated small business is the backbone of the economy, the Chamber simply did not see that evident in the budget. For businesses that were first to close or were impacted by lockdowns and ongoing restrictions, having a budget that invests another $771 million on non-economic measures is not putting the focus on economic recovery that is needed or has been promised. The Chamber looks forward to sitting down with the Premier today to find out more about his plans for business and the recovery. And it is now my pleasure to welcome Kisma Parna, Associate with National Public Relations, to introduce the Premier.
Good morning, everyone. It is a pleasure to be here on so many levels. A room with people is truly a sight for sore eyes. I moved to Nova Scotia from Estonia in 2019, thankfully before the pandemic overtook the world. I fell in love with it then, and today I'm so fiercely proud to call myself a Nova Scotian. The people of Nova Scotia have truly risen to the occasion this past year. It was hard work. Like so many businesses, our team at National learned a new way of working, connecting, and solving problems together. Living rooms became offices. Kids and pets became co-workers. And we all learned the importance of muting ourselves. This past year, we learned a lot, and we shared that experience with so many others around us. With commitment, determination, respect, and kindness, we faced dark days with courage, compassion, and empathy for one another. The world is now looking at Nova Scotia with interest, and our province is growing like it hasn't in many decades. More people than ever are choosing to live here. Some are coming back after years away. Others, just like myself, have come from all over the world to make a life here. This is incredibly exciting, and it's leading to economic growth. Just look around you today. When you step outside today, you will see cranes, hear the construction, and feel the city growing. But we also have to recognize that this growth isn't benefiting everyone, and it isn't happening in every part of our province. There is more work to be done. It is my great honor today to introduce our new Premier Iain Rankin, who will share his vision for the next year and the prospects ahead. With all eyes on Nova Scotia, we look forward to being part of this journey. I'm sure I speak for all of us when I say I'm looking forward to brighter and more hopeful days. Ladies and gentlemen, Iain Rankin.
Thank you for that warm welcome, especially that more recent one there. I'm just joking. I'm not quite as tall as the last guy, but So thank you for inviting me today. I'm here with one of my colleagues, Minister of Finance and Inclusive Economic Growth, Minister Kasoulis. And let me begin by acknowledging that we are on Mi'kma'ki, the traditional and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. It is a real privilege for me to speak to you today about the state of our province. 6 weeks ago, I had the privilege of being elected as your Premier. But over the last 7 years, I've been working hard as a government MLA, committed to building a brighter future for all Nova Scotians. The last 12 months has been tough. COVID shocked the economy and our lives generally in an unprecedented way. And there's no question we took a significant hit, the retail, accommodation, and restaurant sectors being severely impacted. The good news is that the hard work and sometimes difficult decisions of the last 7 years put us in a very strong financial position to manage this crisis. That allowed the government to step up and support our local businesses, and we will continue to be there to help through the recovery period. I want to pay special tribute to Nova Scotians. The respect they show for public health guidelines kept us all safe and made our province the envy of not only Canada, but indeed the world. A recent Globe and Mail editorial about the fight against COVID-19 came up with this plea. Can we put Nova Scotia in charge of the country yet? In our province, it has been the collective efforts of Nova Scotians who have paved the way for our overall employment rates almost back to pre-COVID-19 levels. We are leading the country in our economic recovery, and we are just getting started. Employment among women has now surpassed pre-pandemic levels, and our population is at an all-time high, tracking towards 1 million. By late June, we expect all Nova Scotians to have a chance to get their first dose of vaccine. With our continued blue-nose grit, we will avoid a third wave of the pandemic that is now impacting other regions. Consequently, that has enabled us to move forward boldly with a purpose, introducing an economic plan that charts a path to a fair and prosperous future for all Nova Scotians. A key part of that strong economic policy is our goal to return to a balanced budget in 4 years. Yes, we still have to manage through the crisis, but we will not adopt policies that lead to large structural deficits. This pandemic has been hard on revenues, and we do not need to impact businesses that have been harmed so much so far. So there are no increases, as mentioned, to taxes or fees in this budget. But what this budget does contain is increases to modernize healthcare, increases in education to support inclusion, and historic investments to help those most vulnerable in Nova Scotia. While our economy has begun to move, the pandemic has disproportionately impacted citizens of marginalized communities. That's why I believe we needed to make significant investments, namely the largest increase by far to our income assistance rates, catching up to other parts of the country. And this budget makes an overall largest investment in our most vulnerable citizens. And that is government's role, to look out for those most vulnerable in our society. It's also government's role to carefully watch taxpayer monies while ensuring investments can make us positioned well for a recovery and a bright economic future. By staying the course on fiscal discipline, we will prevent the types of future tax hikes that can stunt economic growth and make us less competitive. Our economic plan is one that leverages our comparative advantages and recognizes that we need to position ourselves well for this fourth industrial revolution. We're helping drive innovation with targeted programs, and we're investing more in digital, the fastest growing segment of our economy. And the province's capital plan is stimulating that immediate economic recovery in all regions of our province. For the second consecutive year, our capital plan is spending over $1 billion, highlighted by some of the healthcare work going on in Cape Breton, CBRM area, over $1 billion, and of course, the QE2 new redevelopment project. And I'm looking forward to the Bayers Lake Outpatient Centre breaking ground this fall. When there were lockdowns and border restrictions that impact vital industries like tourism, we have been there and will be there to help. And when public health advises it's okay to open a border, I will not hesitate, as I did within Atlantic Canada. We provided $7.3 million for COVID response fund for our hotels, motels, and inn operators, and supported the $1 million tourism digital fund to ensure our businesses can adapt to new digital technology. We also included support for cash flow to our small to medium businesses like restaurants and other service businesses that have been impacted by this virus. The $7 million small business real tax rebate is a recognition that restrictions that we've imposed have impacted their capacity. Food is the single biggest sector we have in our region, and we have to be a partner to ensure gains we've made in industries like wine go further. And that's why we've invested $5.4 million in a Nova Scotia quality wine strategy. We have hard-working entrepreneurs in this sector. Hans Peter's here with us today from Grand Pre. He's a prime example of ways that these entrepreneurs are looking at value-add type products. I don't know if you tried the Vivo. I recommend it. It's fruit juice with he would remind me, no sugar. And it's in Costco's across the country, so you should check that out. Our agriculture sector, we're supporting it by extending growing seasons, helping them become more efficient, and looking at ways that we can support their bottom line by introducing a $5 million climate technology fund. During visits and meetings in the Annapolis Valley, I spoke to farmers about how this program will help the environment, increase food security, and displace food imports to our province. And that's the type of public policy we need to do to tap into ingenuity of Nova Scotians. The restaurant sector is a key part of all of our communities across the province. That's why we're pleased to act on the request of the industry to include in the budget an expansion of the 10% discount to bottled beer, cider, and ready-made drinks. Luke Urchevik of Restaurants Canada said that change will go a long way to help Nova Scotia's hard-hit food service sector transition from survival to revival. And that's not all. Last week we announced a change to regulations that will now allow dogs on patios, something that other provinces and many places throughout the world have permitted. The ED of Restaurants Nova Scotia has said this decision will amount to about a 5% increase in business for the sector. And I have a couple of dogs, and Mary and I look forward to bringing Rocco and Weston to our favorite patio this season coming up. Reducing red tape and regulatory burden is how we can help our businesses succeed. The Office of Regulatory Affairs and Service Effectiveness has already found $50 million worth of savings to business since 2017. And we've set a new target to find $10 million this year with the directive that they'll be able to find $5 million in the first 3 months of this fiscal. That's going to help our business owners invest and hire for the next generation of workers here. Most of what we have done over the past year has been through the lens of this pandemic, and our budget reflects that. The province spent $617 million in 2020 to fight the virus, and the fight is still on. But the pandemic is a paradox. It caused so much disruption and loss, but it also revealed gaps and opportunities. Last week, our government announced we'll be extending virtual care for another year with a plan to make it permanent, and both our patients and our doctors have seen the success with over 1.5 million healthcare services provided through telephone or virtual visits in the last year. This economic recovery will be different from the past recovery efforts, and I believe we need to seize it. While climate change is an existential threat, we need to see this challenge as an opportunity. And the business community especially needs to see how environmental responsibility is related to fiscal responsibility. We cannot stand by and burden future generations with the costs of inaction on climate change. And I will not forego economic opportunities that other provinces could take the lead on. We are rising to the occasion and spending $80 million in climate initiatives this year. We've already announced more funding for efficiency programs in the next couple of months. We're planning to tender more renewable energy projects because it not only helps the environment, but it provides for competitive pricing, and more predictable pricing for energy for our people and for our businesses. The jobs associated with this in the skilled trades amount to the thousands in every region of the province with this direction. And we will need all Nova Scotians to take part in this economic recovery. Nobody should be forgotten, which is why we added an equity lens to how we spend our Climate Green Fund. Our workforce, both private and public, will only reach its full potential if those who historically have been underrepresented also have an opportunity to learn, work, and thrive. Attracting and welcoming new immigrants is another economic success story. Over the last 7 years, we have tripled our immigration here. And our population looks a lot different than it was 7 years ago when I was elected. My own community in Timberlea Prospect looks a lot different. And with Halifax being now the second fastest growing city in Canada, we have those new Canadians that are coming here with their entrepreneurial spirit to thank for that. We are now just starting to see this happening more and more outside of Halifax. And I have said many times that a strong capital city is good for Nova Scotia. But let me also say a strong support for rural Nova Scotia is good for Halifax. We have all the pieces for the private sector to lead economic growth, and our government will ensure we encourage more labor availability, more training, and more innovation, and at times, just getting out of the way. Businesses choose to invest in Nova Scotia, not only because of our strong work ethic, but because we are dynamic, we are innovators, we see our potential on the global scale, and we have world-class post-secondary institutions. The digital future is here, and the digital skills are essential for the jobs of today and tomorrow. We are excited about the potential of high tech, especially for the potential for Nova Scotia becoming a startup capital, a place where startups can grow and create the jobs of the future. And what better jurisdiction to lead in this area? Just shy of 1 million people, but more than 10 universities, and a Nova Scotia Community College with 13 locations in every region of the province. And that is a clear advantage that we need to build on. 2 years ago, we announced funding for our Nova Scotia Community College to support an expansion of the computer science program. Just recently, we announced nearly $17 million for our 4 universities that deliver computer science programs. Dal, SMU, St. FX, and Acadia will continue to train the next generation of tech talent and entrepreneurs. Travis McDonough, one of our new generation of successful entrepreneurs, built a world-leading company right here in Halifax. He said this investment is incredibly worthwhile and will benefit not only today's generation, but generations to come as we mature as a global-reaching tech hub. Last week, when I was at Dal, I also met with Jeff Don at his Tesla lab. Another great story. Dal being the first university in our country with a partnership with Tesla. They are developing the technology to ensure the extension of life of batteries for our cell phones and electric vehicles, fast-growing sectors. Another example of how research at our institutions can spin off into companies, how we monetize that. Novanix in Bedford is now expanding, growing jobs, giving job opportunities to the PhDs graduating from Dal that are more and more choosing this place instead of Silicon Valley or other places. And when I was there, Jeff introduced me to 2 young new Nova Scotians who traveled from one Germany and the other China. Jeff was involved in the recruitment efforts to find the best of the best. And they are, let me tell you, excited about the opportunities and what's happening here. And outside of HRM, the Verschuren Center on Cape Breton is being recognized for attracting world-class labs from Toronto and Silicon Valley to scale up biotechnology startups. Again, all examples of the startup culture here in the city and our province. So I'm about 6 weeks in and fulfilling many of the commitments I ran on in the leadership campaign. One of those during the leadership race I talked about was my firm belief that the best ideas on policy and how we drive economic growth come from outside of government. I proposed an Economic Growth Council made up of women and men who have these skills and a passion for our province. So today I'm announcing the creation of the Provincial Economic Growth Council. It will serve as a resource to me and the government, informing policy options on advice how to attract capital, how to ensure we maximize our ability to help our companies expand, and how to ensure that we're ready for the most investment that we can attract to this province. You've read in the budget and heard us speak about positioning Nova Scotia as Canada's startup capital. The new council is designed to help make this happen by strengthening our startup ecosystem to make Nova Scotia a world-leading location to launch, build, and grow a business. Startups actually grew during this pandemic. The momentum is on our side, and we need to seize it. We have 10 distinguished Nova Scotians volunteering their time to provide advice. They come from diverse backgrounds, regions, and sectors. The council will be chaired by someone well known to many of you. Scott Bryson was a champion for Nova Scotia throughout his 22-year political career, and I'm pleased to welcome his leadership as chair of this team of advisors. It gives me tremendous confidence and optimism for our future. Combined with our budget plan, I know we're ready to take Nova Scotia to the next level. Let's not stop now. Let's not settle for where we are. Let's get ready to write our next chapter. It's time to take our province into the future of new opportunities where everyone can succeed. Thank you. Want me to go sit down now?
Thank you very much, Premier, and of course, thank you, Kaisa. Thank you very much. I'd like to now introduce Faten Al-Shazli, who is the co-founder and chief creative officer of We, Us, Them, a full-service creative agency in Halifax. Faten is one of Canada's top 100 most powerful women and has recently been named one of Atlantic Canada's top 25 most powerful women. Faten, if you'd like to come up and join us. And I'm excited to have her join me on stage today to chat with our Premier. Now we'll jump into the Q&A and I'll settle into a seat. There we go. I think the mics are on. They are. And Faten, I'll turn it over to you to start with the Premier.
Can we take the masks?
Yes, we can absolutely. I guess we're so used to wearing masks now that we just keep them on.
Well, it's been several weeks since you were sworn in as Premier. How's the new role going? Have there been any surprises?
It's going great, actually. It's really been interesting to be able to dive right in. We had the House session already scheduled, so we got to work on day one to start to look at the budget, the throne speech, and of course delivering on the priorities that I committed to during the leadership race. And it's really an enviable position that we're in Nova Scotia relative to other parts of the country. So it's been a real privilege so far.
Wonderful. Can you provide us with an update on your campaign goals for projects like the Atlantic Loop, global cessation, and the greening of transportation?
Absolutely. This references many of the areas I think we need to take some accelerated action on relative to the climate crisis that we're in and the economic opportunities that we have in front of us. So I committed to more than doubling our renewable energy. This will help create jobs in our province. Renewable energy is now an affordable price, and so we need to start looking at those opportunities, building our efficiency programs. We've had discussions with the federal government, with Nova Scotia Power, of course, who have been advocating for specifically the Atlantic Loop project. I think that's an opportunity for us to draw in hydro from Quebec, but we're going to continue to look at all ways to get ourselves off coal, 10 years earlier than what was originally planned before I took office. It's a commitment that I think is worth pursuing for better quality air, for our economic opportunities. It's just the right thing to do. And I do think that, all environmental experts would agree that while we reduce our reliance on fossil fuels in our energy grid, we need to electrify our transportation system at the same time. So we announced some rebates for electric vehicles, and then we also are looking at how we best support the public transit system, which will have even bigger impact in places like Halifax.
Thank you.
Great. I'm going to jump into the questions now. So on the budget, and I know you alluded during your presentation to some of the announcements that took place in the last number of weeks prior to the budget, like the rent program or the property tax rebate, and that's great. But I guess looking forward for all of 21 and 22, there didn't seem to be a lot for many of those impacted businesses. So I think for the impacted businesses, I think I'm asking today, is there something else in the wind, or is there something else that we're maybe missing in the budget for those tourism and hospitality businesses that we haven't seen yet?
Well, first of all, we didn't want to wait for the budget. I think that looking at the restrictions and how it's impacted occupancy capacity, down towards 50% for restaurants, and the inability to service as many people at spas, tattoo parlors, and those service businesses, I wanted to find an immediate benefit. So we settled on a 50% rebate program. That's cash flow in their pocket that we knew that they weren't able to get. We need to look at how we look at the economy holistically and support how we grow that economy. We don't have endless amounts of money to support. We're at a $500 million deficit right now, so we have to recognize that every dollar we're spending is debt. And so I believe that we need to react, be nimble. If there are more restrictions imposed by us, and I recognize we're the ones making that difficult, then we'll be there to support. If there are more restrictions imposed, if there are shutdowns like what happened in the second wave, in Halifax especially, we'll be there to support. But we also have to be mindful that strong public health policy results in the best economic policy, and the proof is right now what you see actually even be able to do what we're doing today. And so as long as we continue to follow that public health policy, I think in the long run our economics will be favorable, but we're required when there's an immediate need to support our businesses, we'll be there.
Okay, that's good to hear. One of the cornerstones of the platform was the environment, as you mentioned, climate change, the need to make changes to meet federal and international climate change goals. And you mentioned just a moment ago, create those jobs in the future. What's the outlook for green GDP growth, and is there an opportunity for Nova Scotia businesses to participate in that growth?
Absolutely. I talked about renewable energy and the trajectory of our greenhouse gas emissions. We have, in fact, more ambitious goals than the federal government set out for 2030, going to 53% below. That represents a lot of trade jobs, building wind turbines, clearing land for that, solar panel installment, and even more on the efficiency side. I saw Scott Skinner here. No one knows more than Scott about how that translates into jobs across the whole province, and that's one of the other benefits. In rural communities, and here in Halifax, it really supports the trades. That brings our community colleges along and making sure people are trained up for those new job growth opportunities. Some say the green economy is the fastest growing. I think we need to make sure that we're looking at public policy that benefits those jobs in the province, and we're going to continue to look at ways that government can help. On day one, I did announce efficiency programs for low-income Nova Scotians, and that will stimulate job growth, and so will the incentive for electric vehicles to those businesses as well.
Great. Okay. Turn it back to Fatin.
The budget document states that added supports may be required to stabilize various sectors in Nova Scotia as the pandemic evolves. What sectors do you see needing extra support, and how soon could we see the support materialize?
Yeah, that's similar to the previous question from Patrick. I think the ones that need the most support are the ones impacted by restrictions. So if you have a service business and you're actually looking at people every day, cutting hair, serving people at their dinner tables, I think that's where the impact is. And again, we need to be able to adjust where required. Fortunately, we do have strong fiscal management that I inherited over the last 7 years, balancing 4 budgets in a row, and almost the last one that got sidetracked would have been 5 in a row. So we were able to adapt quickly and fill the gaps from the federal government, who have been a great partner through this, the CERB benefit especially, taking care of the labor side and ensuring employees have been whole, but other programs like our loan program have been effective, and we'll continue to make sure we're doing that, while at the same time targeting strategic investments that support where I see growth sectors and what the future economy can really be taking off.
Wonderful, thank you. Nova Scotia's downtowns and main streets have been particularly hit hard by COVID. Considering their importance to Nova Scotia's quality of life, is there a plan to focus special recovery efforts on them?
Yeah, I think what that speaks to is government's role in ensuring that we have vibrant communities. And I think that we can do more to support placemaking. Argyle Street's a prime example, and we know how CBRM is looking at some of the downtown, the Charlotte Street area, looking how they can dress that up, provide Wi-Fi, those infrastructure type services. And I think that's government's role, is to look at ways that we support, instead of looking at direct support and grant funding, which is required at times when we have to shut down and there are restrictions. Rather, government should be looking holistically on how to support that growth trajectory so that places like downtown that have restaurants and those service businesses seek the spin-off benefit of having a thriving digital economy here, of having startups coming here. I referenced all these new startups that are coming here. Sydney is actually the leader in Atlantic Canada by bringing 10 companies here. The businesses around that area will benefit from that. So we need to make sure that we're supporting all sectors, but when the restrictions are imposed, government does need to be nimble and react.
Great, thank you. The Chamber's been consistent in our support for COVID-19 testing at the airport. You're good enough to publish your schedule every day. So I know you have meetings today, I think with the Atlantic premiers, and I think with all of the premiers across the country, as well as the federal government. With so many, well, virtually all of our cases, since there's no community spread in Nova Scotia, all of our cases coming from travel, doesn't it make sense to have testing at the airport? We're eventually going to open to the rest of Canada, obviously not today, but eventually. Isn't it a better idea to have testing at point of entry?
This has been a discussion for a while, and I know Dr. Strang has been engaged with the airports. It is his belief that we need to make sure that we have testing broadly available in Nova Scotia, so anyone traveling in can get a test. There is discussion right now about starting at the airport with their employees and then potentially looking at travelers. So I'll continue to be engaged in that discussion, but we have to also recognize what he pointed out yesterday at the conference is that travelers coming into other provinces have been tested once and even twice and then end up having a third test where they were shown as being negative and having COVID-19. So it doesn't provide immunity that you come off a plane and get tested to know that you don't have COVID. And that's his main concern with this. Having said that, we understand the effectiveness of mass testing, and that's why we've led the country, frankly, in how many tests we've been able to provide for Nova Scotians, so that will continue. But right now, this self-isolation period will remain, whether we had testing at the airport or not. That's the advice of Dr. Strang, and I think I need to be very mindful that his advice had worked to get us to where we are today, and that will continue.
I don't want to be the one to push back on Dr. Strang, but I'll push back a little bit.
Tim does all the time. So.
Okay, perfect. and that is, and he does, and that is that Dr. Strang is correct in that there are evidence of cases that have developed after testing. But given that we're not doing any testing at the airport, then clearly there would be a benefit, I think, to testing. But I accept your point. So.
Right, and just keep in mind that we're catching all our travelers. We're doing really well when we report our cases every day. Mostly it's travel, and we're able to catch them, and they self-isolate quickly.
Right, and I'm just going to kind of go off without the questions and say, and testing is important, and people can get tested, and should get tested, and you should make testing a regular part of your habit. I went out and got tested yesterday, just to be ready for today. Didn't want to sit too close to you. Yeah. There you go, a little comfort for you. In our pre-budget submission, we asked for greater funds for tourism in Nova Scotia. I see that I saw an ad on the way down here today for Prince Edward Island. And it said, it had a pause button. I thought it was a good ad. Had a pause button and it said, when you're ready to press play, think about coming to Prince Edward Island. I guess I'm wondering, wouldn't it be a good idea to provide some extra money to Tourism Nova Scotia to advertise how great it is in Nova Scotia so that when the time comes, people will have already made a decision to come to Nova Scotia? I know it's more money.
It is more money. I mean, look, I'm a business background. I know you are too. And I just really think that we need to be really prudent and effective with any money that we're targeting. And I respect some of the work we've done in the past, looking at growth sectors in Europe and in China and other places that we can figure out where our growth is. And with so much uncertainty in the world right now, places in our country locking down completely, I don't want to waste any of the precious money that we have while we're in deficit until we have some more comfort. I recognize that travelers want to plan, they want to plan ahead, and that's why we've been looking at this Atlantic Loop. I'm not thinking outside of the, Atlantic bubble, but I'm not thinking outside of the bubble right now. I think that we need to be really focused on public health, ensuring that we're not being too aggressive with what we're looking at in the future. But there will be a time where we look at marketing to other jurisdictions. We just want to make sure we're doing it in the right ones. And once we have our vaccine predictability out through to June, we're on track for that. That'll give us more confidence as long as other places have that too. And the science behind all of that is evolving every day that Dr. Strang talks about on the asymptomatic spreader. So we need to make sure that we're continuously mindful on that. But there will be a time when we need to support marketing again, for sure.
The death of George Floyd was the catalyst to motivate many around the world to recognize the unconscious and conscious racial biases we have in our daily lives, both personally and in the workforce. What does your government plan to do to make a serious change in the way programming is offered and policies developed to ensure that these biases are minimized or eliminated?
For sure. This is another defining, I think, issue of our time right now. We need to make sure that we're looking at how our hiring practices are better in government, and I expect the private sector to do that too. We've done right away with the good work of my transition team. We looked at very high qualified Nova Scotians, African Nova Scotians, hiring them into the most senior positions in government. I think that impact, especially the head of our public service, where we employ thousands of people, now everyone will be able to see that they have a role to play in our public service, and I think that that's a positive thing. The new Office of Equity and Anti-Racism will be specifically focused on how to work horizontally across departments, because it's not, systemic racism isn't specific to one department or one system. It's embedded throughout our systems through generations. We need to start the hard work and hard discussions of looking at that, and that started before me. Stephen has been a mentor to me, and he took on this file. What we're doing is accelerating some of the work we've done with land titles, putting a focus on ensuring that African Nova Scotians have what they deserve as title to their own land, things like that. And it's terrible what happened with that murder. It was a public lynching. And we have issues in our country that we need to tackle in our justice system, our healthcare system, it's throughout. And this government is committed to taking those challenges and taking them head on.
Thank you, Premier. COVID had a major impact on affordable housing and our homeless community. What does your government intend to do to ensure we protect our citizens and support them through this?
Yeah, I mean, our population is growing at record paces, and that poses an issue. It's good that we have population growth, but we have a supply issue that's similar to other big cities. We're becoming a big city in Halifax. So the way we approached it during the pandemic, seeing that more and more people were coming here, was a rent cap before I came in. That rent control will remain until we see a better supply and demand mix in the market. So the municipality needs to be able to approve development, ensure that that supply gets out there. We need to be a partner and figure out how we incentivize that, how we help nonprofits build units so that they're not just market-oriented units. I advocated on some of the specifics on how I see that happening, but simultaneously there was a housing commission put together, which is also something I recommended, and they're very close. May is when they come out with their recommendations. So I'm eager to get those because I respect their work and what they're working on. So I want to make sure that we're looking at what's being proposed and acting immediately to ensure that we provide that opportunity to build more housing.
Great, thank you. Patrick?
I want to apologize for my coughing, but isn't it good that I had a COVID test? So, sorry. Getting back to something you mentioned earlier, it's a worry for businesses, or it's impossible for businesses without some level of certainty about the future to have confidence to hire tour guides, staff, mechanics, arrange for marketing to operate for July or August. Businesses are making decisions now about whether to hire, whether to close, whether to book events. We do know, Dr. Strang has said that there will be, in all likelihood, people will have their vaccines by the end of June. It would be great to get some more certainty, understanding that there's always things that could change, but some certainty on gathering sizes or opportunities for events or activities for the future. So people are making plans now. How can they get some of that certainty for July, August, or even September?
Well, it's hard to look in a crystal ball on a good day. We're still in this pandemic, and we're working hard. Nova Scotians have done the work, and public health is continuously watching what's happening in other provinces. The variant strain is concerning in other provinces, and we need to be mindful that that needs to continue. So I can't give a recommendation other than our economy is moving faster than anywhere else in the country right now. We're very close to our pre-pandemic levels. Look, we just went back to 100% capacity in our retail, in our gyms and sports and arts centers. That should give confidence to people. So when I have the advice that I can make those changes, I will. Atlantic Canada now, people can come here and not self-isolate. We did that because they have virtually the same epidemiology than we do. So those are evidence-based decisions that we need to continue to look at, but we can't forecast too far out right now.
Great. I was personally very excited to see dogs allowed on patios, as I have a dog, sometimes more than one. But we were concerned, and I'm sure you were as well, when you saw people provide feedback from accessibility, about accessibility, and the concern that disabled folks or may not be able to utilize the patios as fully as the dogs would be able to use them. So I guess I'm kind of looking for some feedback on that decision and some comfort that people should have that there will be accessible options, or that your government is thinking about accessibility.
Yeah, of course. So the building codes changed so that new restaurants have to be accessible, and we need to really work hard. This doesn't detract from our commitment to make the province accessible by 2030. There's a lot of work to do. This is an old city. We need to work on providing opportunities to have grants so that restaurants can adapt. Bringing dogs onto patios, this is catching up to the times, frankly. There are other provinces that are doing this throughout the world. If we want to be a world-class tourism destination, if we want to attract more people that are, frankly, spending a lot of their times with their companion animals, we need to be able to do this, especially when there's guidelines that actually provide regulations. There are, as you know, there are places that allow dogs, and they work around what exists in our current legislation. This at least makes it safe. There's signage, and if there are problems with dogs, just like humans, they should be gone, right? So there's rules in place that were looked at very closely by public health and others to ensure that it doesn't impact accessibility. They're out of the alleyways, they're kept on leash, and if they are an issue, especially with guide dogs, I saw that complaint, I understand that, then they should be asked to be removed from the place.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Patton.
All right, this question touches me personally and professionally. Students across Canada and around the world are making decisions on universities right now, with little to no certainty on an end to quarantine a lingering question surrounding Halifax as an international airline destination and the lack of in-person classes will have an impact on students' decisions to come to Nova Scotia. Why aren't we providing enabling information and programming to ensure students make the right decision to come to Nova Scotia for their schooling?
Yeah, and I think our universities are an asset here, and the work that they've been doing over the pandemic. I've been meeting with presidents and students, frankly, just last night, the Mount students, and they're all eager to get back to normal. But like everyone, we've been adapting, using the virtual setting classes that I think have been beneficial. Again, the challenge becomes how much can we predict in the future of what it looks like. I'd love to say tomorrow we're going to be back to normal, but I'm very pleased so far of how we managed this pandemic, how Nova Scotians have adapted, and we'll continue to support our universities as we have in this budget and make sure that we keep our tuition to a level that's affordable so that we are competitive and we continue to attract people to this province.
Thank you. This is my last question. What do you think Nova Scotia's new norm will look like? Who wins and who loses?
I don't think anyone loses. Our plan is to make sure that everyone has a chance to succeed. You know, we have to look at what our societal issues are across the world that are very present here in this province. We have the dual crises of inequality and climate change. And I think the best leaders in the world are thriving on that challenge and seeing it as an opportunity. Public policy that helps the public good is things that, you know, help provide opportunities for all people, reducing our carbon footprint, and that makes sure that everyone has a stake in it. If we can support those growth sectors like digital that I referenced, encouraging startups, encouraging innovation in all of our industries, our traditional sectors across the province, ensuring that government is a partner, and letting the private sector lead through the Economic Growth Council. These are positive initiatives that I think will set us on a positive path, and those Nova Scotians that have not been represented in the past will be more and more represented, and we will all benefit because of that.
Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Premier.
Another question for me, I guess. I won't say it's my final question because I'm sure I'm going to ask another one, but always ask Premier McNeil, what keeps him up at night? What keeps you up at night? What's your worry?
I had the benefit of being a minister before being Premier, so I have to say I sleep pretty well. Especially, we are in an enviable position in this province, and I certainly don't take credit for that. I've only been on the job 40-some days. Nova Scotians have done the work. They've listened to public health. They've done the work, and we are where we are today because of that. Our public health heroes that are working on the front lines, I can't say enough about. So that gives me tremendous confidence. And I'm someone that really looks at evidence and science when I make decisions, being in lockstep with public health. But there are challenges. I mentioned the variant. That's something Dr. Strang and I watch very closely. We were looking at northern New Brunswick, and some people saw, well, maybe you should shut down the border. The reality is there's not much traffic coming from Edmundston into our province, and so far we've seen that we made an effective decision there. If that were to create more challenges around the Moncton area where we see more cross-border traffic, we would adjust very quickly. And that's the benefit, because we're looking at this not only daily but hour by hour. And if we continue to do that and base our decisions by evidence, I'm comfortable with where we are in our decisions.
Okay, great. And I guess my final question would be, will the election be in May or June?
I'm very much focused on ensuring that Nova Scotians are safe right now. I ran on a number of commitments in the leadership campaign, and I'm really happy to hit the ground running. A lot of really positive initiatives are coming out, investments, legislation. I won't be able to meet all of them before the campaign because some of them are very long reaching, getting off coal, for example. But these are things I believe in, and I'm really enjoying my time introducing myself to Nova Scotians across the province and what I believe in, my principles, believe in what we've done the last 7 years and where I think we can go next so the province can take it to the next level. And I'm encouraged by what I'm hearing back, and I look forward to an election campaign in the future.
That's great. Thank you very much, Premier. Thank you very much to everyone who's joined us in the room. This is I suppose, one of our first events, probably one of the first events you've attended.
In person, yes.
Yes, with,
Lots of
with
virtual.
slightly under 100 people who are physically distant or in a bubble. So thank you very much to all of you for coming. Thank you very much, Premier Rankin. Thank you all for tuning in today. It's been great to have you all here. I expect we will record this and we will make it available. Thank you, of course, to National Public Relations for supporting this important discussion today. I think there's 2 tables for National, so I don't know where to look, but thank you very much to National for supporting us, and thank you to our host sponsors who were able to make this free to everyone, who's virtual. The Construction Association of Nova Scotia, Dalhousie University faculty of the School of, I should know this, I'm on this board, the Dalhousie University School of Management, Rowe School of Business. Is that close? Is that close enough? Okay. McGuinness Cooper, the Nova Scotia Association of Realtors, Olin Brewery, and of course, TELUS Business. Thank you all very much for joining us. Thank you again, Premier Rankin, and thank you to your staff for enabling this. And we look forward to seeing everyone in person again soon. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.
Oh, I was supposed to say, sorry, I was supposed to turn the page. Are you a golfer, Premier Rankin?
Not this year.
Not this year, okay. Well, we're hosting our annual golf tournament on June 10th, and registration is now open at halifaxchamber.com/events. Have a great week, everyone, and see you next time. Thank you.
Thanks, Patrick.